Today I'm going to talk about JavaScript testing because JavaScript is coming into our life deeper and deeper and deeper, and even backend developers eventually have to write JavaScript and then test it, I hope. So my name is Artem or Miroshnyk in most of social networks or technical sites. I work in Novosol in Denmark, Copenhagen. That's not an IT company, it's like a summer house rental one, but a year ago they decided that they have enough resources to start everything from the scratch and improve everything, blah, blah, blah. And then they picked Drupal and then they picked me. And now we have one big, nice family. And why today I'm going to talk about JavaScript testing because we've decided at the most complex parts of our application to use React. Some other team use another framework, but mostly the most complex business logic on front end written on React is their XJS. And after some years of experience of being a developer, you start thinking about tests because after all, we're all lazy. And first you think that write test, that's an extra hours, but then you decided that, okay, if you have test, you could be more or less dumb. You should not think about any consequences and something. You just write one line of code that's supposed to work in that place, just then run tests, even assuming that it's gonna fail there and there and there. But it's just easier, and you could spend some time like in those comics about C programmer waiting for program to be compiled. We're waiting to test it run. So that's basically three monsters, not monsters, but mainstream libraries nowadays to write unit tests, integration tests, sometimes even functional tests. That's actually Jasmine is the oldest one. Which I know how many years it's on market, but it has a nice community, basically the biggest amount of stars on GitHub than anybody else, but it's a bit outdated because for a nice big library, it's pretty hard to, for example, switch right away to new JavaScript standard. And or be decoupled, or be flexible in some cases, because there could be HTML application with almost no logic but lots of on-clicks events. Either it could be some game or some mathematic stuff in JavaScript when you need some other approaches. Then there is a set of Mocha Chai in Synchronic. That's basically what I'm using and what I'm gonna talk about and use examples of. And there is Jest, that's youngest, the most hipsters one from Facebook. And basically what to use or how to choose, it's almost like here. Basically, if you have any application, all of these three frameworks are capable to do almost everything. The only difference is your own taste, your team taste, one of your teammate experience, or maybe the first skeleton, the first blog post you found in the internet. And only after a year or some years of experience and fuck-ups and something, you're able to judge, okay, you read different blogs and see, and for example, I will show that afterwards. So code style of, the high level of these frameworks, it's almost identical. So basically, Jasmine and Jest, 99% identical. If you're talking about the top level API, it's just describe. It's a method to define a test suite. And then it, so it's basically readable. So what I'm describing and what each test case should do, and expectations. And Mocha and Chai, it's a bit different. The only difference is here, two equals, and there is two equal as one word. Then I think the biggest difference between them is using doubles. So this is the most simple overview of doubles. Doubles is how many of you have written advanced test for PHP unit with like deep nested PHP unit mocks? Anybody? Come on, please. No? Okay, so basically doubles is like mocking or stubbing or watching some stuff in your code when you don't need to make a real request, a real database. You could mock some specific service if your code is decoupled enough. And basically here it's function, because most of the stuff in JavaScript is function, methoded function, function is function, arguments and function is function. And there is almost no difference as well, except like the main feature, as Jest showed, is like everything is a mock from the start in Jest. And if you're looking on these functions, they're almost identical. We just create spy with another method, then we run it as a function, and then we access some metadata inside. But afterwards, I will show you the deeper differences, and that's actually the only reason you're able to pick one framework over another one. Because after all, when you have only 10 tests, there is no difference at all, because all information is available on the internet with lots of experience. But when you have like a couple of thousand of tests, and your code has specific orientation, like I told, if it's HTML only or React, Jest is nice to go and Moch is nice to go, but Jasmine has too much noise around its API. So yeah, that's Drupal after all. What to test? So that's an example of pretty simple and tiny function. But even here we have like lots of problems, which is the functional programming is trying to avoid using pure function and everything else. So dependency injection sometimes in PHP also trying to help us to avoid, because there is almost nothing in this function except like external global variables that we have to provide. I'm talking about this Drupal translation. We're not passing it, and we have to keep sure that it's there. We have to define it somehow. And in some other places of code, it could be not just Drupal translation, it could be Windows. And when you're working with Node.js or other stuff, could be no window global variable and so on and so on. Then it's like external function. That's the easiest problem to resolve usually in tests. And you have to mock your data and mock your function. So for example, you should not test what's going there inside if it's real unit test, but not a lazy one when you test everything with one big method and then hope that everything is gonna work. Also, you have to mock this object. And the proper test, also you will then see in your test coverage, you have to cover all these cases. So first it should be undefined and what's gonna happen. Then it should have strings but without option context, then with option context inside but without this the latest array item. And and then I will show you. This is a bit more complex example because here we have the same problems, but then we have jQuery plugins because it's here. This is actually jQuery plugin for Drupal set summary. Then we have actually jQuery with selectors. Then we have the same problems as before. And with jQuery, it becomes even harder because jQuery requires actual DOM. jQuery requires sometimes when it's not about selectors, but about some, for example, ajax request, it requires actually network or emulation of network and a way to make this request, and so on and so on. Ta-dun, ta-dun, ta-dun. Yeah, and this is another example. This, first of all, it's ES6. Then it already has promises, and yeah, again, mocking also imports of some external libraries that you are able to mock, or you, I'll show you how to deal with it. Yeah, and now like about the API of set of mocha, sign and chai. Basically, it's I'm showing you it's describe and IT methods at the very top level when you're describing the test suite and test cases. And sometimes where your test file is big, it's kind of nice to split it up, because then you're able to use this after each and other additional method I will show you afterwards. Inside first subscribe or nested subscribe. Also, when you have test file for like 3,000 lines, it's very nice when it show you right away when is the error and what's wrong. Not just line comment, number of the line. Then it's hooks like in PHP unit and almost everywhere else, you're able to put something in before and after the whole test suite, or before each and after each test case. And basically, it's a, well, easy naive example. Sometimes you need something from window. Here it's like test property, but okay, usually you are trying to use like local storage, session storage, or something. And if there is no property there, your test will fail, because Node.js doesn't have anything. And usually that's the environment you run your tests. And another problem why we need not just before, but then after to delete something you've introduced in your test. That's because when you have this thousands of tests and not just run it, usually it's one process, how do you say it, machine. And for example, if you're modifying something in outside of describe, outside of before, here for example, you're able to put variables or I know some mixtures for your tests. You could actually screw up other tests because they are not completely separated, and sometimes it brings very painful hours of debugging why something doesn't work, and how could it be when you have two tests going one another after another. The whole bunch of your environment changed. That's because another test case was in queue, defined it only this time by Node.js, that okay, it's gonna be this test case, then another test case from another test file, and then your test case back. Then yeah, all JavaScript is mostly asynchronic. When you start to do something more than changing classes by jQuery. We are jQuery, and that's like the easy example how it actually works. That's, for example, we have this asynchronic function. That return your promise that's gonna be resolved in 3 seconds and update some external variable. And that's how test look like. So you got this promise, and first of all you check that nothing happened before, that synchronic code. You expect that counter is still 0 because nothing happened before. And then you actually resolve your promise manually and expect that okay, it's gonna be updated. This is your counter. And then another good thing is this done variable, because basically JavaScript, or not just, doesn't know when your test is done because you have to, well, specifically specify that, okay, this line should only work after 3 seconds because I have somewhere a function that has this 3 seconds. But apparently when you specify done as an argument, just mean mocha and yes, see, okay, that means that this is a synchronic test and I have to finish it only after done callback is called. Either you have some timeout function, timeout parameter for your test command for npm. But each framework has some, wrappers to make life easier and your test code nicer. And here is this chai is promised. So it's basically introduced this expectation eventually. And when Node.js sees it, it decides itself, okay, I have to use done function and I have to work with this expectation as a promise and resolve it somewhere manually. So it's like much more readable, and it's pretty easy to make an error somewhere here, especially if it's a bit more complex. You have to specify the parameter, then use this parameter, and then put a done in a proper place. And here is much nicer. Yeah, and now about doubles. Like in most of the languages, when the function is not everything, like in objective-oriented languages, so in PHP, we mostly have only two way of creating double. It's stubs and mocks. But in JavaScript and similar languages, we're able to create another one, is spy. That's actually, you don't do anything with function, you just create a possibility to watch it and store a metadata information about calls. Who has called this function, how many times, what was the arguments and what was the return, and so on and so on. It's mostly necessary for integration tests when some logic inside this function has to be done actually. And what's happening here, that's sometimes I include the imports and some additional function. It's just how to make it works, but usually all technical blocks contain this information as well. That's like Chai is a expectation framework for Mocha, one of the biggest one. Actually, what I'm using, there's another nice expect, gexpect, and some other libraries, but yeah, Sign works better with Chai. Oh, what's up? Here we create a function with some logic, and then we're able to create another function that has this functionality inside, but it's actually spy of the sign-in. And then we see, okay, it was not called, then we call it, we expect the proper answer, and then we expect amount of calls, and then we are able to access all arguments. We are just method, or we are the properties of get call. Either we could redefine fn, put in like let instead const, and then fn assign this new function with a wrapper. Yeah, there is almost no difference between method and function in JavaScript. There is only some context of this inside, but the API of redefining this method is a bit different. So you put first the object and then the method to redefine. In this example, this most common case is redefining jQuery ajax. Or another one is redefining some prototype methods of the object. And here that's extremely easy in my taste comparing to some places in PHP. Stop it. So we have a method that uses jQuery inside. Another interesting point about import, that's actually in JavaScript by default. This import is using kind of singleton pattern, because when you import something from jQuery, there is a object, created object. If it's not created first time, it was created. And actually afterwards, if you use the same jQuery, it's already created and has some properties. That's why we're able to import it here. So for example, imagine that this code is not here. So we are not accessing this ajax in this jQuery that we imported directly, but it's somewhere inside another function. But we're still able to import the same jQuery singleton and override its function to include a spy, and it's gonna work. Oh. Another one is stubs. Stub, basically you don't care about behavior of this stub. You just provide some controlled by you function or something that will return results that you expect after some parameters. The biggest difference is between stubs and mocks and spies. Difference between stubs and mocks not so big. That's why in PHP unit there is almost no difference. You're still able to use mockery and default PHP unit API to create end stub and mocks without actually any difference, and then transform it. But here, so imagine we are working with the same ajax, but in this example, we're actually gonna use the real ajax function, and it's gonna make the real network request for our URL, and obviously gonna fail. Here, we're able to create a stub that won't do anything right now, but here we just specifying that, okay, so if the ajax method will get pass one argument, it's gonna return one. Okay, it's not a real this XML request, but it's not really interesting for this case. Either return some specific value, either throw, either there is another API method there. That's actually nice, pretty nice documentation. That's why I've picked sign-in over to Jasmine that day, because the sign-in documentation, that's the most complex part. It's not about like describe an IT or some expectation. It's mostly about these doubles. But sign-in had nicer documentation. And here we're able to expect the real one, and no request gonna fail our test. Also, we expect exceptions or undefined if we have not specified the proper arguments for this case. It's still gonna work. It will return undefined. Nothing will happen, but maybe you would like to check this case. And here is the mock. That's basically very similar to default PHP unit behavior when you specify everything. How many times, how it's gonna be used, how many calls, which arguments, and which specific return values, and everything. And then if all this queue of expectations is not gonna be the same in the end, the test gonna fail, because here I could specify like 20 different methods and then use only one, and everything gonna be good. And here, if I will specify that, okay, it's once with these arguments, and then if I will run it without this optional argument, it's gonna fail in the end. Also, well, you have to actually run this verify, otherwise it's just gonna be nice and green. Oops, not here. Where are you? Yeah, Back to jQuery test. Apparently, it's pretty easy to prepare most of the stuff for jQuery testing. So after you write it somewhere in the top of your test case or in your test bootstrap file, or you installed JS DOM library, jQuery is able to work already, and that's actually one of the easiest tests. So you specify the inner HTML, and then all this just jQuery selector, and then after will work and will modify body inner HTML, and you're able to test most of your stuff, even with different scrollers and so on, because all these scrollers and on click, on change, all of them are events, and after you put a document variable, you could make it by your own and by hand, add in all necessary callbacks, like fire the event that's actually callback. You're able to fire an event on scroll, and then check that your on scroll handlers were working, and so on and so on. But usually it's pretty hard to make manually. There is a nice library, JS DOM. It's some kind of alternative for Phantom.js, but how to say it? There is difference between Drupal and Symfony. Drupal has almost everything out of the box, and usually you don't need most of it. And usually you just cut some unnecessary stuff. And Symfony doesn't have anything to your working site, and you have to add the stuff. The same stuff is you're able to specify the whole document object with all methods, with all properties by your own, and add it then into each test case. Either you could use like JS DOM method with nice JS DOM library with nice method, create document, and it will create this body with all inner HTML and other properties. That it will create some methods, that will create console log function and window object with all functions. Maybe you don't need it. And yeah, there is another example of function from Drupal 8, I think, yeah, from Drupal 8, with direct usage of ajax, and apparently how to test it. First of all, that's the method of Drupal.Progress Bar, and we have a bunch of functionality. First of all, this one is the separate functionality that has to be tested. Usually, when after you once decided to fix your test coverage, all new test cases, you will go line by line by line by line, because afterwards it could be painful to just override all your tests to improve coverage. But well, what is the interesting right now? I'm gonna test the second part with URL, and basically the most, well, how to say, expensive and complex part is this ajax call for a success case. First of all, you have to, well, stub or mock or spy ajax somehow. Then we have to run it with all predefined properties. And then we have to see that, okay, this line worked, this line worked, and this line worked. And another benefit for sign-on, it has a diamond feature, the fake server, that allows you to, well, if somebody was writing the tests for Drupal 8, after we've switched to Drupal 8, right now we're using Gazelle. There's also a nice API to fake Gazelle responses for requests. And here you're specifying that, okay, there's server, fake data, and URL, and then before your suit case, or maybe before each, it depends on your conditions. You're creating server and put in like, okay, there's going to be only one not one response, but the same response. And if it's get method, this URL we're gonna respond with this status code, with these headers, and with this data, which is actually our plain JavaScript object. And then we have to restore it. That, as I told, try to restore everything you're working on in this test case or test suite. And then test becomes pretty easy. So you just create the actual Drupal Progress Bar with some ID of the element you're gonna create it, but we're not creating it in this message, so we don't care. We don't care about these two functions because we don't run at them. So we could put spice, we could put these empty functions or anything else. And then we stub set progress method because it's not a spy because we don't want to check what's going on there in progress. Maybe there is another I know, ajax call or something. Also, we don't want to make a mock because there is only one call here with 3 parameters, and well, to my taste, it's overhead to put a mock there because it's not a condition. It's not under condition here. And then we actually run this method, and then they expect the result of the stub. So the first call of the stub, if there is no call, there is not going to be args, and we got something like fail to access args, some error, and that's gonna fail your test. And basically, we don't care what was the reason of failing the test. Then it's gonna be equal to 15. Everything is fine in label string because we specified here in fake data. And in this method, we put in the progress percentage, progress message, and progress label. So test is not, well, it's not too complex after you set up your server, because sometimes there could be a problem, because I was testing it on Node.js on Linux. If it's Windows, not Linux, something else. If it's not Node.js, but something else. If version, it could be outdated till the end of my session. This is the JavaScript world. But we've tested that we get inside this if. We tested that JavaScript ajax call of jQuery was called. We tested that, well, in case of success, because we specified it is going to be 200 status code of the response. We get inside success callback or handler, and then this method is going to be called with the proper parameters. If we would expand this method with like another 200 of lines, we could cover everything, every line of this method, and I'm pretty sure that soon is going to be done, because the nice parts already in Drupal 8, I think 3. At least I've seen their ESLint packages on, and now we're easy. Now we're free to add tests right now. Great. Maybe even tomorrow in sprints. Yeah. About ES6, it also fairly easy because you either specify it for Mocha as another parameter for CLI Mocha program as a compiler. Either if you have a Bootstrap file, that is more preferable because you need some additional stuff like, for example, sometimes in your code you could have check what is the environment, production or test, and specify something. You need to put this global process variable somewhere. That's the best place is Bootstrap file. Then you require this bubble register. Then you could put JS DOM and then prepare your local storage, your session storage, and something else because lots of your code using them. It's like, okay, it's like a Bootstrap file. If you have more than 5 tests, usually you need Bootstrap file to put a logic for everything there. And yeah, a bit about React. And GSX, so basically it's a, how to say it, nice way to put HTML and JavaScript, because lovers of Angular thinking that it's a proper way to mess JavaScript and business logic with presentation. For my taste, it's not true, because in this example there is almost no business logic. Almost. Actually, yeah, the only business logic is if max units, but basically that's the property of HTML already. So there is a nice way in React to put business logic in high-level order functions or the containers or somewhere else, but okay, it's not about React. React has own testing tools, but Airbnb has created another wrapper on top of these testing tools. And the library names Enzyme that makes it fairly easy to test and mock or stub different HTML using the React components. And basically, this is the preparation of set tools. Maybe, yeah. Sometimes the problem with React and Mocha and Chai, that all this list of imports could be really huge, because it's only, how many lines? Okay, 4, and here, and usually it could be even the second one. So 6, 7, up to 10 lines of import just to include the full stack of Mocha plus Chai plus Sign to work. But who cares? Let's say usually your EDA is able to close your import. It's almost like if you start complaining about the amount of use lines in PHP code, it's also going to be not the best point. But basically, it's again describe. Then, as I told you, you're able to put some your own stuff that's going to be local, not the global variables. For example, here that's the mixtures. I get any properties, and yeah, again properties to put it in the component, or it could be like properties for creating progress bar in Drupal. And yeah, that's the way in PHP Unit there is a provider stuff, so you're able to write your test method bigger a bit, or maybe twice or even 3 times bigger. But then you allow yourself to run through all different cases, creating a data provider and put in different conditions. So, for example, yeah, to really test all this function, we have lots of different conditions. Is this a timer? Is there a URI? What's the status of the response? Do we have this question mark in URI? Then what's about status inside progress and blah, 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 blah. Sometimes you're able to create, 15 test cases, and then 70% of each test case is going to be the same. Either you're able to create one bigger, the more abstract, and go through data provider, but yeah, it would be better to show it in an example. But screwed. And this is actually how looks testing first of the markup. That's basically you got the all necessary properties for creation a ticket component, and there is a nice method shallow that basically almost goes through all React logic and is lazily ready to provide anything that is available through React, but not now. And then you're able to use selectors. You're able to use different, flexible selectors. It's like, for example, yeah, tooltip could have some attributes, could not have, but you just searching. It's like flexible jQuery selectors, but using the component names and properties, not putting it as selectors with this square, with this round brackets and so on, but writing the same XML code, which is actually very readable and nice to read. Then it's change handler. There's another nice feature of, well, React I like, because everything is still all pure JavaScript without almost all noise around. And still to test your handler, you just simulate. It's you fire in the event for the whole unexistent document, the change, put in it, assign it to the proper input you found, and put in the same old native JavaScript event object with target and with a property check it true. And still the sign-in is here. And yeah, another test. Yeah, that's it. Do you have any questions?
So you've shown how to kind of cheat on what to test, on how to test kind of badly written JavaScript. So, for example, the Drupal example you took, how will you rewrite them to make them better testable? Like for example, translation one with the outside objects and
Yeah, I'm looking. What? This one, yeah. Basically, the only problem here is first of all maybe using Drupal as a global reference to the object and using the global variable. Well, the biggest problem is using the global variable. And another one, which is all my lints are shouting about, is redefining arguments if you're not returning them back. But it's not about test, it's about like linting. But basically the biggest problem is, yeah, the global variable. But it's the fairly easy example.
I guess what's the alternative? Because you're not going to ask for people to pass in the whole object every time they call the function, for example.
Yeah, but we are able to get like, you know, some getters somewhere. Not the whole point of using global variables, if you're defining somewhere here and then you have a whole stack and then you have to access it, still it's like dependency injection. You have to specify that, okay, at least I'm going to get this variable through somehow. And then you're not preparing some external data, because yeah, usually all this external data could break you something. For example, this example, if you're testing this Drupal T function only, and you're gonna emulate these global variables not in a proper way, and someone else, because you've decided, and usually Mocha is just means either everybody not clearing all global scope for you. And then another person will run this test, and in some case, it's gonna work for him because it's on the first attempt for him. And then, you know, the name of the test file gonna change, and then bam, it fails, and you're like, look, how could I get this string from where? Maybe he could find it using like global search over the whole project and found this string, but if it's like test string, and test string is everywhere, that's maybe the only problem here. Here it's like a bit longer. Basically here the problem is this anonymous function. You're not able to test it separately.
That's the problem everywhere.
Yeah, but well, it won't be a problem like after we'll start write test. It's like easy. You move it to the Drupal behavior block settings summary, some other not attachment property, and that's it. But yeah, I was trying to find nice examples for the presentation in Drupal code, and basically the biggest problem is like the big methods. With okay, you're not able to make it shorter because it's just long logic with lots of small steps. And as far as I understand, we were writing, rewriting, and maybe it's not very easy to split it or make it shorter and nicer. But basically, who cares? After someone will write test once, and that's it. So then, thank you for listening. And yeah, we're hiring.